The message came at midnight ship time. Commander Daniel Hayes was sitting alone in his small room aboard the Earth vessel Starbound Hope. He was eating a cold sandwich and reading reports about cargo shipments. It was boring work, but it was his job. He managed supplies and made sure things got where they needed to go. Nothing exciting, nothing special. Then his communication screen lit up with a priority alert. Daniel put down his sandwich and read the message 3 times. He was sure there was some mistake. The Empire, the most powerful alien civilization humanity had ever discovered, had sent a direct request. Their immortal queen empress wanted to meet with a human representative, but not a president or a general or a diplomat. She wanted Daniel Hayes, a logistics officer nobody had ever heard of. Daniel walked to his captain's office in a daze. Captain Maria Santos was a tough woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had commanded the Starbound Hope for 15 years and had seen many strange things, but even she looked confused. "I have checked it 5 times, she told Daniel. "The message is real. They specifically asked for you by name. They know your service number, your birth date, even the name of your childhood pet." "That is impossible," Daniel said. "I have never met any. I have never even seen one in person." "Well, someone over there knows who you are." Captain Santos handed him a data pad. "They are sending an escort, 12 warships. They will be here in 6 hours. Daniel felt his stomach drop. 12 warships. Any one of those ships could destroy the entire Earth fleet without breaking a sweat. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed civilizations that made humanity look like children playing with toys. For 3 years, humans had watched from the edge of their territory, waiting for an invasion that never came. And now their queen wanted to talk to Daniel Hayes. He went back to his quarters and started packing a small bag. He did not know what to bring. What do you pack when you might be walking to your death? He grabbed some clothes, his grandfather's watch, and a picture of his parents. It did not seem like enough. There was a knock at his door. He opened it and found Lieutenant Amy Brooks standing there with her arms crossed. Amy was his best friend on the ship. They had served together for 6 years through some very bad situations. She had red hair that she always kept in a tight braid and green eyes that could see right through any lie. "You are not actually going," she said. It was not a question. "I have to go, Amy." "No, you do not. You can refuse. Tell them to send someone else. Send a diplomat, send a soldier, send anyone except you." Daniel sat down on his bed and looked at his friend. She was scared for him. He could see it in her face, even though she was trying to hide it. "If I refuse, what message does that send?" he asked. "It tells them that humans are cowards. It tells them we are too afraid to even talk to them." "Maybe we should be afraid," Amy said. "Daniel, they could be planning anything. They might want to study you, dissect you, use you as a hostage. We have no idea what they want." "You are right, we have no idea. That is exactly why I have to go." Daniel stood up and put his hand on her shoulder. "For 3 years we have been hiding at the edge of their space, waiting for them to attack. But they have not attacked. They have not invaded. They have just watched us. Do you not want to know why?" Amy was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You always have to be the hero, don't you?" "I am not a hero. I am just a guy who is tired of being afraid." 6 hours later, the escort arrived. Daniel watched from the observation deck as the warships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Each one was shaped like a teardrop made of silver metal that seemed to glow with inner light. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built, bigger than space stations, bigger than small moons. Daniel said goodbye to Amy and Captain Santos and the rest of the crew. He climbed into a small shuttle and flew across the empty space between his ship and the fleet. As he got closer to the lead warship, a door opened in its side like a mouth waiting to swallow him whole. He flew inside. The interior of the ship was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. The walls were made of some kind of living metal that shifted and changed as he watched. The colors were soft, mostly silver and blue, with occasional flashes of deep purple. The air smelled like flowers he could not name. A group of guards was waiting for him. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and 4 arms each. Their eyes were large and dark, holding what looked like tiny galaxies spinning inside them. They wore armor that seemed to be part of their bodies, flowing like liquid when they moved. None of them spoke. They simply turned and walked, expecting Daniel to follow. He followed. The journey took 4 days. They traveled through something called jump gates, massive rings floating in space that could send ships across thousands of light years in seconds. Humans knew these gates existed, but had not figured out how to build them yet. Watching them work was like watching magic. Daniel spent most of the journey alone in his quarters. They brought him food, strange fruits and vegetables that tasted better than anything on Earth. They gave him water that seemed to sparkle with energy, but they never spoke to him. They never answered his questions. They just watched him with those galaxy eyes and waited. On the 4th day, they arrived at Prime. Daniel pressed his face against the viewport and stared. The planet was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It was covered in forests of trees that glowed with soft light. Cities floated in the clouds, connected by bridges made of crystal. Oceans sparkled like liquid diamonds. Everything was perfect. Everything was peaceful. And at the center of the largest continent stood the palace of Empress. It was so big that Daniel could see it from orbit. A mountain of crystal and metal and light, rising into the sky like a monument to power. His shuttle began its descent. Daniel watched the palace grow larger and larger, filling his viewport, filling his mind. Somewhere inside that impossible building, the most powerful being in the galaxy was waiting for him. He still had no idea why. But he was about to find out. The shuttle landed on a platform made of white stone that felt warm under Daniel's feet. More guards were waiting for him, their 4 arms folded in a way that seemed formal and ceremonial. They led him through the palace gates and into a world that made his head spin. The inside of the palace was even more amazing than the outside. Hallways stretched for miles, lined with statues of heroes and leaders from thousands of years of history. The walls changed color as Daniel walked past them, shifting from silver to gold to deep purple. The floor was so smooth it looked like walking on water. They passed gardens filled with plants from dozens of different worlds. Some of the flowers sang when Daniel got close. Others reached toward him like they wanted to touch his face. One tree had fruit that glowed like tiny suns. Finally, they reached a massive door made of something that looked like frozen light. The guards stopped and turned to face Daniel. "The Empress waits," one of them said. It was the first time any had spoken to him. The voice was deep and musical, like someone playing a beautiful instrument. "You will show respect. You will not speak unless asked. You will not approach the throne unless invited." Daniel nodded. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. The doors opened. The throne room was the size of a small city. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands stood in galleries around the edges, all of them watching Daniel as he walked forward. He felt like an ant walking across a table full of giants. At the far end of the room sat the throne. It was made of crystal that seemed to contain entire galaxies, spinning and swirling with light. And on that throne sat Empress. Daniel had expected a monster. He had expected something huge and terrifying, a creature of absolute power and cruelty. That was what the stories said about her. She had ruled the empire for over 3,000 years. She had conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations. She was supposed to be a nightmare wearing a crown. But the woman on the throne looked almost fragile. She was smaller than the other, with silver skin marked by patterns of deep violet that glowed softly. Her hair was long and white, flowing down past the throne like a waterfall of starlight. Her face was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe, like looking at a sunset or a perfect piece of music. But it was her eyes that caught Daniel's attention. They were ancient and wise and full of something he did not expect to see. Curiosity. "You may approach, human," she said. Her voice filled the entire throne room without her seeming to raise it. "I have been waiting to meet you for a very long time." Daniel walked forward until he reached the bottom of the steps that led to the throne. He bowed, hoping it was the right thing to do. "Your Majesty," he said, "I am Commander Daniel Hayes of Earth. I am honored to meet you, but I must admit I am confused. Why did you ask for me? I am nobody important." The Empress smiled. It changed her whole face, making her look younger and warmer. "You do not remember," she said softly. "But I suppose that makes sense. It was 12 of your years ago, and you had no reason to think it was special." Daniel frowned. 12 years ago, he had been a young engineer on a mining ship. It had been a boring job, moving rocks from one place to another. What could possibly have happened that would interest an alien empress? And then it hit him. The crash. 12 years ago, continued, a scout ship crashed on a small moon in the outer part of your solar system. The pilot was young and inexperienced. She made a mistake and her ship was damaged. She was hurt, dying. Daniel remembered. He remembered the strange signal they had picked up. He remembered convincing the captain to investigate. He remembered finding the crashed ship and cutting through the metal to get inside. He remembered the alien girl, covered in silver blood, crying in pain and fear. "Your people had every reason to be afraid," the Empress said. "You had heard our communications. You knew what the Empire was. You knew we could destroy your entire species if we wanted to. The smart thing would have been to kill the pilot and pretend you never found her." "Some of my crew wanted to do that," Daniel admitted. "Others wanted to capture her and hand her over to our government. They thought she might be valuable. But you stopped them." She was hurt, she was scared. Daniel could still see that girl's face in his memory, her galaxy eyes full of terror. "She was just a kid. I could not let them hurt her." "No, you could not." The Empress rose from her throne and walked down the steps toward Daniel. Every in the room seemed to hold their breath. "You treated her wounds with your primitive medical supplies. You repaired her ship with tools made for digging rocks. You worked for 3 weeks without proper sleep, without telling your government what you had found. And when she was strong enough to leave, you let her go." "I did not do it alone," Daniel said. "My whole crew helped once I convinced them. But it was your choice, your compassion, your belief that kindness matters more than fear." The Empress stopped in front of Daniel, so close he could see the light pooling in the patterns on her skin. "Do you remember what you said to her before she left?" Daniel remembered. He had been young and stupid and probably too emotional, but the words had come from his heart. "I told her that the universe is too big and too dark for anyone to face alone. I told her that kindness costs nothing but means everything. And I told her that if her people ever came to Earth, I hoped they would remember that at least one human chose to help." The Empress nodded slowly. "That pilot was my daughter, Daniel Hayes, the princess of the Empire, and she has never forgotten what you did for her." The throne room erupted in whispers. Daniel felt like the floor had dropped out from under his feet. "Your daughter," he managed to say. "Yes, when she returned and told me what happened, I did not believe her. A human showing mercy to an enemy, a human risking everything for a stranger. It seemed impossible." The Empress reached out and touched Daniel's face with fingers that felt like cool silk. "But she convinced me, and I have been watching your species ever since." "Watching us for 12 years. "Yes, trying to understand you, trying to decide what to do about you." The Empress turned and walked back toward her throne. "And now I have made my decision. That is why I brought you here, Daniel Hayes, because you are the human who changed everything, and you deserve to be the first to hear what I have to offer." She sat back on her throne and looked down at him with those ancient, curious eyes. I have a proposal for humanity, and it is going to change the galaxy forever. The Empress dismissed the court with a wave of her hand. Thousands of nobles and officials filed out of the throne room, their whispers echoing off the crystal walls. Soon, only Daniel and the Empress remained, along with a few silent guards who stood in the shadows. "Walk with me," said. "What I have to tell you is not for public ears, not yet." She led Daniel through a hidden door behind the throne and into a private garden. This place was smaller than the others he had seen, but somehow more beautiful. The plants here were ancient, their roots twisted and thick. A small stream ran through the center, its water so clear Daniel could count the stones at the bottom. The Empress sat on a bench made of living wood that seemed to shape itself around her. She gestured for Daniel to sit across from her. "Your species confuses us," she began. "We have studied you for 12 years now. We have watched your history, your wars, your art, your science. We have seen the terrible things you do to each other, the cruelty, the violence, the hatred." Daniel said nothing. He could not defend humanity's worst moments. "But we have also seen something else," the Empress continued. "Something we did not expect, moments of incredible kindness, acts of courage that make no logical sense, humans sacrificing themselves for strangers, humans fighting against impossible odds and somehow winning, humans creating beauty in the middle of destruction." She waved her hand and the air filled with holographic images. Daniel watched scenes from human history play out before him. A firefighter running into a burning building, a woman hiding refugees in her basement during a war, a man standing in front of a line of tanks refusing to move, doctors working until they collapsed, teachers protecting their students, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "We have encountered 462 intelligent species in our 9,000 years of empire," said. "We have conquered most of them. We have destroyed some. We have ignored others. But we have never seen anything like humanity." "Is that why you have not invaded us?" Daniel asked. "Because we confuse you?" "Partly, but there is another reason." The Empress paused, and for the first time, Daniel saw something like pain cross her face. "The Empire is dying, Daniel Hayes." Daniel stared at her. Of all the things he had expected her to say, that was not one of them. "Dying? Your Majesty, your empire is the most powerful force in the galaxy. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Your ships can destroy planets. How can you be dying?" "Because we have not had a natural birth in 400 years." The words hung in the air like a curse. 400 years, the Empress repeated. "Do you understand what that means? We are a race of immortals who have forgotten how to create new life. Every alive today was born before your grandfather's grandfather was even thought of. We do not age. We do not die of natural causes, but we also do not grow." Daniel tried to wrap his mind around it. A civilization without children, without new ideas, new perspectives, new dreams. Just the same people, living forever, slowly becoming stagnant. "How did this happen?" he asked. "We made ourselves too perfect." Stood and walked to the edge of the stream, looking down at her reflection. "Thousands of years ago, we eliminated disease. We extended our indefinitely. We removed all chaos and uncertainty from our society. We thought we were creating paradise. Instead, we created a tomb." "You removed the chaos," Daniel said slowly, starting to understand. "But chaos is where life comes from. Change, adaptation, growth. Without those things, a species becomes frozen, static, dead even while it still breathes." The Empress turned to face him. "We have tried everything to reverse it. Genetic engineering, artificial reproduction. We have even tried merging our DNA with other species we have conquered. Nothing works. The spark of life, whatever it is, has left us." "And you think humans have this spark?" "I know humans have it. Your species is chaos. You are unpredictable in ways that terrify our scientists. You can be cruel one moment and kind the next. You destroy and create with equal passion. You are everything we used to be before we made ourselves perfect. The Empress walked back to Daniel and sat beside him on the bench. Up close, she looked tired, ancient. For the first time, Daniel realized that immortality was not a gift, it was a prison. I am offering humanity a partnership, she said. Not conquest, not submission, a true alliance between equals. We will share our technology, our knowledge, our resources. We will give you access to the jump gates, help you colonize new worlds, teach you things that would take you centuries to learn on your own. And in return, we want to learn from you. We want to study how your species maintains its vitality, its creativity, its capacity for change. We want to understand what makes humans human. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to bring that spark back to our own people. Daniel sat in silence for a long moment. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. This was not just about Earth or the Empire. This was about the future of life itself in the galaxy. Your Majesty, I am just a logistics officer. I move boxes from one place to another. I do not have the authority to accept an offer like this. I know, the Empress smiled. But you are the human who saved my daughter. You are proof that your species is capable of being more than the sum of your darkest impulses. I wanted you to hear this first because you are the reason I believe this alliance might actually work. There will be people on Earth who do not trust you, Daniel said honestly. They will think this is a trick, a way to lower our defenses before an invasion. I expect that. Your species has good reason to be suspicious of power. You have seen too many of your own leaders abuse it. Reached out and took Daniel's hand in hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, like touching polished stone. But I am asking you to trust me anyway. I am asking you to take a chance on something better. Daniel looked into her ancient eyes and saw something he recognized. Something very human. Hoping. I will need time to think about this, he said, and I will need to contact my government. Of course, I have arranged quarters for you in the palace. Take as long as you need. The Empress stood and looked down at him. But Daniel Hayes, I want you to remember something. The universe is too big and too dark for anyone to face alone. Those were your words 12 years ago. They are the reason we are having this conversation. They are the reason humanity still exists. She turned and walked away, leaving Daniel alone in the garden with the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders. He sat there for a long time, watching the stream flow past and wondering what he was going to do. Daniel spent 2 days alone in his quarters, trying to decide what to do. The rooms the Empress had given him were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed was soft enough to sink into, the food was better than anything he had ever tasted, and the windows looked out on gardens that seemed to stretch forever. But Daniel barely noticed any of it. His mind was spinning with questions he could not answer. Was the Empress telling the truth? Was the alliance real, or was it some kind of trap? Even if it was real, would humanity accept it? Would Earth's governments trust an alien empire that had conquered 17 star systems? And why had she chosen him? He was nobody, a logistics officer, a man who moved boxes for a living. There had to be thousands of better choices for something this important. On the second afternoon, there was a knock at his door. Daniel opened it and found himself face to face with someone he had not expected to see. She was taller than he remembered, and her silver skin was marked with the same violet patterns as her mother, but he recognized her immediately. The same galaxy eyes, the same gentle face, the princess he had saved 12 years ago. "Hello, Daniel Hayes," she said. "I hope we might talk." Her name was, or at least that was the closest human sound to her real name. She walked into his quarters and looked around with curiosity, touching the furniture and examining the decorations like she had never seen them before. "I have never been in the human guest rooms," she explained. Mother had them built after she decided to contact your species. She wanted you to feel comfortable. It is very nice, Daniel said. Much better than my quarters on the ship. Smiled. It made her look younger, almost like the frightened child he had found in that crashed ship all those years ago. Will you walk with me? She asked. I would like to show you something. They walked through the palace gardens together, past fountains that played music and trees that whispered in languages Daniel could not understand. Moved with a grace that made him feel clumsy and awkward, but she did not seem to notice. You have changed, she said as they walked. 12 years is nothing to my people, but I know it is significant to yours. I am older, Daniel admitted, not sure if I am wiser. You must be wiser. You are here, speaking with the Empress of the Empire instead of hiding on your ship like a frightened animal. Stopped beside a pool of water that reflected the floating cities above. Most humans would be terrified. I am terrified, Daniel said honestly. I just do not let it stop me from doing what needs to be done. Looked at him with something like admiration. That is what I remember most about you. When you found me in my crashed ship, I was certain I was going to die. I thought you would kill me or capture me or leave me to suffer alone. Instead, you held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay. You were scared. Anyone would have done the same. No, they would not. I have studied your species, Daniel. I know what humans are capable of. Many of your people would have seen me as a threat or a prize. You saw me as a person. Reached out and touched his hand, a gesture that seemed to carry great weight. That is why my mother believes in you. That is why she believes this alliance can work. Daniel looked down at her silver fingers wrapped around his human ones. Such a small gesture, such a huge meaning. Can I ask you something? Of course. Your mother says they are dying, that you have not had a natural birth in 400 years. Is that true? Smile faded. She let go of his hand and looked out over the water. It is true. I was one of the last children born to our people. I am 412 years old, Daniel. I have watched my civilization slowly freeze like water turning to ice. We do not change. We do not grow. We simply exist day after day, year after year, century after century. That sounds lonely. It is, more lonely than you can imagine. Turn to face him. That is why meeting you was so important to me. You were different. You were chaotic and unpredictable and alive in a way my people had forgotten how to be. When you fixed my ship, you sang songs I had never heard. When you bandaged my wounds, you told me jokes that made no sense. You were so strange and so wonderful. Daniel felt his face getting warm. I was just trying to keep you calm. You were being human, and that is exactly what my mother wants to understand. That chaos, that unpredictability, that ability to be terrible and wonderful at the same time, it is what keeps your species alive. It is what we lost. They walked in silence for a while, passing through gardens and over bridges and past monuments to history. Daniel tried to imagine living for 400 years, watching everyone and everything stay exactly the same. It sounded like a nightmare. Do you think the alliance will work? He asked finally. I do not know, admitted. There are many on my world who do not trust humans. They think your species is too dangerous, too unpredictable. They fear that you will betray us the moment it becomes convenient. And what do you think? Stopped walking and looked at him with those galaxy eyes. I think you are our only hope. I think the man who risked everything to save a frightened child he had never met is exactly the kind of person who can change the future of both our species. She put her hand on his shoulder. I believe in you, Daniel Hayes. The question is, do you believe in yourself? Daniel thought about his life. He thought about all the small choices he had made, all the times he had chosen kindness over cruelty, help over harm. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a man trying to do the right thing in a universe that often made it very hard. But maybe that was exactly what made him special. I am going to recommend that Earth accept the alliance, he said quietly. His face lit up with hope. There will be problems, Daniel continued. There will be people who do not trust you. There will be conflicts and misunderstandings and moments when everything seems like it is falling apart. But I believe that the universe is too big and too dark for anyone to face alone. And I believe that if we work together, we can build something amazing. Threw her arms around him in a hug. It was awkward and strange and wonderful all at the same time. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing in us. Daniel hugged her back, thinking about the scared little alien girl he had saved 12 years ago. She had grown up. They both had. Thank you for giving me something to believe in, he said. On the morning of the third day, Daniel Hayes stood in the throne room of the Empire, ready to change history. The court had gathered in full force. Thousands of nobles and officials filled the galleries, their silver faces watching him with expressions he could not read. Some looked curious, some looked hostile, some looked like they could not believe a human was standing where he was standing. Daniel understood how they felt. He could barely believe it himself. Empress sat on her crystal throne, her violet patterns glowing softly in the light. Beside her stood, wearing formal robes that made her look both beautiful and powerful. They both watched Daniel with hope in their ancient eyes. Your Majesty, Daniel said, his voice somehow steady despite his pounding heart. I have prepared my report for the United Earth government. With your permission, I would like to send it now. Nodded, you may proceed, Commander Hayes. Daniel activated his communication device. The message would take several hours to reach Earth through the quantum relay system, but he had spent all night writing and rewriting it. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. To the United Earth government, he began, from Commander Daniel Hayes, currently on Prime. I have met with Empress of the Empire. Her proposal is not what we expected. She is not offering conquest. She is not demanding submission. She is offering partnership, alliance, friendship. The throne room was completely silent. Everyone was listening. The Empress believes humanity has something her people have lost. She believes our chaos, our unpredictability, our capacity for both terrible darkness and stunning light is valuable. She wants to learn from us. She wants to understand what makes us human. And in return, she is offering us access to technology that would take us centuries to develop on our own. Daniel paused, gathering his thoughts. I understand that many people will be suspicious. Our history teaches us to fear the powerful. We have seen too many empires rise and fall, too many promises broken, too many trusts betrayed. That could destroy us if they wanted to. That is a fact we cannot ignore. He looked up at the Empress and saw her watching him with patient attention. But I have spent 3 days on this world. I have spoken with the Empress and her daughter. I have seen their cities and their gardens and their monuments, and I have seen something I did not expect to see. I have seen a civilization that is dying, not from war or disease, but from perfection. They removed all the chaos from their lives, and in doing so, they removed the spark that makes life worth living. Daniel thought about the fear in her eyes when he found her and the hope in her eyes when she hugged him yesterday. He thought about his crew on the mining ship 12 years ago, arguing about what to do with the crashed alien. He thought about all the small moments of kindness that had led to this huge moment of possibility. Humanity is not perfect, he continued. We never will be. We fight and hate and destroy, but we also love and create and dream. We are capable of terrible cruelty and incredible kindness, often on the same day, often from the same person. That is what makes us human. That is what they want to understand. He took a deep breath. I recommend that we accept the Empress's proposal. I recommend that we take this chance, knowing the risks, knowing the fears, knowing that everything could go wrong. Because if there is one thing humanity has always been good at, it is facing impossible odds and somehow finding a way to win. Daniel ended the transmission and looked up at the throne. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Empress rose from her throne and walked down the steps toward him. The court watched in stunned silence as the most powerful being in the galaxy approached a simple human logistics officer. She stopped in front of him and raised her hand in a gesture that Daniel recognized from. It was a sign of respect and connection, usually reserved for family members or close allies. "My advisors told me I was foolish to trust humanity," she said quietly, so only Daniel could hear. "They said your species was too chaotic, too dangerous. They said you would betray us the moment it became convenient." "They might be right," Daniel admitted. "Perhaps." The Empress placed her hand on his shoulder. "But you taught my daughter something 12 years ago. You taught her that the universe is too big and too dark for anyone to face alone. You taught her that kindness costs nothing but means everything." She raised her voice so the entire court could hear. "Today a human taught us that lesson again. Today we begin a new chapter in the history of both our peoples, not as conquerors and conquered, not as masters and servants, but as partners, as allies, as friends." The court erupted into sound. Daniel could not tell if it was approval or anger or confusion. Maybe it was all three, but he did not care. Something had shifted. Something had changed. The future was no longer set in stone. Then the doors of the throne room opened, and Amy Brooks walked in. She looked exhausted and confused and relieved all at the same time. Behind her came Captain Santos and a group of Earth diplomats who must have arrived on a fast ship shortly after Daniel's departure. They all stared at the scene before them with wide eyes. Daniel grinned and walked toward his friend. "About time you got here," he said. "I have got some things to tell you." Amy looked at him, then at the Empress, then at the thousands of aliens watching them. "Danny, what in the name of everything holy did you do?" "I might have just saved the human race, or doomed it, one of those two things." Amy stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound that echoed through the crystal halls like a promise of things to come. "Only you," she said. "Only you could turn a suicide mission into a galactic alliance." Daniel shrugged. "What can I say? Kindness costs nothing." "But it means everything," Amy finished for him. Behind them approached with a smile on her face. She bowed slightly to Amy. "You must be Lieutenant Brooks. Daniel has told me about you. He says you are the bravest person he knows." Amy looked at the alien princess, then at Daniel, then back at the princess. "I think I am going to need a very long explanation," she said. "I will tell you everything," Daniel promised. "But first there is someone you should meet. Her name is, and 12 years ago I saved her life. Now she might be saving ours." The three of them stood together in the throne room of an alien empire, human and past and future, fear and hope. Behind them, the Empress watched with ancient eyes that finally held something new. Not just hope, not just curiosity. Faith. Faith in a species that had earned it through nothing more than a single act of kindness, a single moment of choosing to help instead of harm, a single human who had looked at a scared alien child and seen not a threat, but a person. The universe was big and dark and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. And on that day, in that throne room, two civilizations took the first step toward a future that neither could have imagined alone. Daniel Hayes smiled and took his friend's hand. "Come on," he said, "we have a lot of work to do." And together, they walked forward into a new dawn.